Captain Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the UES Perseverance, watching the stars through the main window. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't mind. After 3 years of deep space travel, he had learned to appreciate the quiet moments. "Captain," called Soo-jin from her navigation station. "We're picking up something big on sensors." Do-hyun walked over to look at her screen. The display showed 12 green dots representing their small human fleet, but ahead of them was something that made his eyes widen. Hundreds of red contacts filled the screen like a swarm of angry bees. "How many?" he asked. 200 ships, sir. Maybe more." Soo-jin's voice was steady, but Do-hyun could hear the worry underneath. "They're huge. Each one is at least 5 times bigger than our ships." Taeho looked up from his engineering console.
"Captain, I'm reading power signatures I've never seen before."
"These ships are running on something way beyond our technology." Do-hyun nodded and pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. We have encountered what appears to be an alien fleet. All crew to stations. This is not a drill." The bridge became busy as everyone focused on their jobs. Hae-won worked at her communication station, trying to pick up any signals from the alien ships. Ji-woo ran checks on their weapon systems, though everyone knew their small guns would be useless against such a large fleet. "Captain," Hae-won called out, "I'm getting a transmission. It's coming through on multiple frequencies and somehow it's being translated into Korean. Put it on speakers," Do-hyun ordered. The voice that came through was cold and emotionless. "Primitive vessels, you have entered space controlled by the Galactic Council. You will immediately power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Your species will be evaluated for proper classification and placement within Council space. You have 30 seconds to comply." The bridge fell silent. Do-hyun looked around at his crew. Soo-jin had her mouth hanging open. Taeho was staring at his screens like they had personally insulted him. Hae-won was blinking rapidly, trying to process what she had just heard. Then Do-hyun started to laugh. It wasn't a small chuckle or a polite laugh. It was a deep, belly-shaking laugh that filled the entire bridge. Within seconds, Soo-jin joined in, then Taeho, then the rest of the crew. Soon the whole bridge was filled with the sound of humans laughing their heads off. "Did they just—" Soo-jin gasped between laughs. "Did they just tell us to surrender because we're primitive? 30 seconds. Taeho wheezed. "They gave us 30 seconds to give up our entire species." Hae-won was wiping tears from her eyes. "They want to classify us like we're some kind of pet." Do-hyun tried to control his laughter long enough to speak into his communicator. "This is Captain Do-hyun to all ships in the human fleet. Did everyone else get that message?" The radio crackled with responses from the other 11 ship captains, and every single one was laughing just as hard. Captain Min-seo from the UES Horizon was laughing so hard she couldn't speak. Captain Byung-ho from the UES Explorer was making snorting sounds. "Captain," Hae-won managed to say while still giggling, "they're sending another message. The same one, but louder." "Of course they are," Do-hyun said, wiping his own eyes. "Hae-won, open a channel to their fleet." "Channel open, sir." Do-hyun cleared his throat but couldn't quite get the smile off his face. "This is Captain Do-hyun of the United Earth ship Perseverance, representing the human species and the Terran Federation. We received your message." He paused, looking around at his still grinning crew. "Our response is this: no." The silence from the alien fleet stretched on for several seconds. Then the same cold voice came back, but this time it sounded confused. "Explain no. Do you not understand the situation? You are vastly outnumbered. Your technology is clearly inferior. Compliance is your only option for survival." Do-hyun exchanged looks with his crew. Soo-jin shrugged as if to say, "Might as well be honest." "Let me explain something to you," Do-hyun said into the communicator. "Humans don't really do the whole surrender immediately thing. It's not in our nature. We're the kind of species that sees impossible odds and thinks, 'Challenge accepted,'" Taeho called out from his station. "Captain, their entire fleet just moved into attack formation. Are they trying to scare us?" Ji-woo asked, checking her weapons one more time. "Probably," Do-hyun replied. Then into the communicator. "We can see you moving your ships around. Very impressive. Very intimidating. We're still not surrendering." The alien voice came back, and now it definitely sounded frustrated. "Your behavior is not logical. We offer you the chance to survive. Why do you refuse?" Do-hyun thought about that for a moment. It was actually a good question. Why were humans always so stubborn? Why did they always choose to fight instead of giving up? You know what? He said. You're right. It's not logical. Humans aren't very logical. We do stupid things like climb mountains because they're there. We jump out of perfectly good airplanes for fun. We keep pets that could eat us. We've been doing illogical things for thousands of years. He could hear similar conversations happening on the radio between the alien fleet and the other human ships. Every human captain was giving basically the same answer. Thanks, but no thanks. But here's the thing about humans, Do-hyun continued. We've been alone in space for our entire history. Every other species we've met has tried to eat us, poison us, or kill us in some creative way. We learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't care about us, so we decided not to care what the universe thinks. Hai-Wan looked up from her station. Captain, I'm picking up communications between their ships. They seem very confused about our response. Good, Do-hyun said. Confusion is better than shooting. The alien voice came back one more time. This is Admiral Veltar of the Galactic Council Fleet. You have been offered terms that no other species has refused in 50,000 years. Your response is unprecedented. 50,000 years? Sujin whispered. These guys have been bullying species for 50,000 years? And no one ever told them no? Taeho added. Do-hyun smiled. Admiral Veltar, this is Captain Do-hyun. Let me introduce you to humanity. We specialize in unprecedented. The communication channel went quiet. On the main screen, the massive alien fleet held its position, but Do-hyun could see smaller ships moving between the larger vessels. They were probably having meetings, trying to figure out what to do with these weird humans who wouldn't follow the script. What do you think they'll do next? Sujin asked. Probably try to show off their superior technology, Do-hyun replied. Try to scare us into compliance. Will it work? Ji-woo asked. Do-hyun looked around at his crew. These people had volunteered to fly into unknown space, knowing they might never see Earth again. They had families back home, but they had chosen to explore the galaxy anyway. They were typical humans, which meant they were absolutely crazy by any reasonable standard. What do you think? He asked. The entire bridge crew grinned back at him. I think, said Sujin, they have no idea what they're dealing with. Do-hyun nodded and settled back into his captain's chair. This should be interesting. Admiral Veltar stood in the center of his command ship, surrounded by holographic displays showing the human fleet. His 4 arms gestured at the screens while his officers watched nervously. 50,000 years, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. 50,000 years of perfect expansion and these humans just laugh at us. His science officer, a tall creature called Kethra, moved closer to the displays. Admiral, our sensors show their ships are incredibly primitive. They use chemical rockets for movement. Their weapons are simple kinetic projectiles. Their power comes from controlled nuclear reactions. Nuclear reactions? Veltar's eyes widened. They split atoms for power? How barbaric. It gets worse, sir. Their ships appear to be held together with metal welds and bolts. No crystalline matrix technology. No energy fields for structural support. It's like they built their ships in a blacksmith shop. Veltar clicked his mandibles together, a sign of deep thought. Then why aren't they afraid? Every species we've encountered immediately recognizes our superiority. His tactical officer, Morden, brought up another display. Perhaps they simply don't understand what they're facing. Shall I activate the pacification field? Do it, Veltar ordered. Show them what real technology can do. Across the Galactic Council fleet, massive generators began to hum. Energy fields spread out from each ship, overlapping and strengthening each other. Within seconds, a bubble of force surrounded both fleets. The pacification field was designed to disable all primitive technology within a 50-kilometer radius. No species had ever been able to operate their ships once the field was active. The human ships continued flying normally. Veltar stared at his displays in confusion. The field is active? Yes, sir. Full power. Every ship in our fleet is contributing. And their ships are still operational? Yes, sir. No change in their power signatures or movement patterns. On the human ship Perseverance, Taeho looked up from his engineering station with a puzzled expression. Captain, I'm reading some kind of energy field around us. It seems to be trying to interfere with our systems. Is it working? Do-hyun asked. No, sir. Our engines are still running fine. All systems normal. Taeho paused. Actually, it seems like this field is designed to disrupt energy-based technology, but most of our systems are mechanical or chemical. Heywan laughed from her communication station. They're trying to shut down our computers, but our computers are just really fast calculators. They're trying to stop our engines, but our engines are just controlled explosions. Basically, Sujin added, they brought a high-tech solution to a low-tech problem. Do-hyun opened a channel to the alien fleet. Admiral Veltar, this is Captain Do-hyun. We noticed you turned on some kind of energy field. Very pretty. Is it supposed to do something? The silence from the alien fleet stretched on for almost a minute before Veltar responded. Your ships should be disabled. Well, they're not. Sorry about that. Our technology works a bit differently than you expected. Explain. Taeho gestured for the communicator. Admiral, this is Chief Engineer Taeho. Your field seems designed to disrupt advanced energy systems. The thing is, we don't really use advanced energy systems. We use controlled nuclear explosions, chemical rockets, and really, really good math. That's impossible. No spacefaring civilization can survive with such primitive methods. And yet, Do-hyun cut in, here we are. Veltar's voice came back, now sounding desperate to prove his superiority. Observe. On the human ship's screens, they watched as one of the massive alien vessels moved toward a nearby asteroid. The ship extended what looked like a graceful crystal structure, and the asteroid simply lifted away from its position and began rotating slowly in space. Gravity manipulation, came Veltar's voice. We can move objects with pure thought, transmitted through our crystalline technology. This is the power of an advanced civilization. The human crews watched the display with interest. It was certainly impressive. The asteroid, which had to weigh at least 10 tons, was dancing through space like it weighed nothing. Very nice, Do-hyun said. Our turn? He signaled to Ji-woo, who had been quietly preparing the Perseverance's main kinetic weapon. Target that asteroid next to theirs. Targeted, sir. Fire. The kinetic round left the ship at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The asteroid didn't dance or rotate or gracefully move through space. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next moment there was nothing but glowing dust spreading out in all directions. No gravity manipulation needed, Do-hyun said into the communicator. Just physics and a really big gun. The alien fleet fell completely silent. Min-ho, working at a secondary engineering station, looked up at Taeho. Chief, are they starting to understand? I don't think so, Taeho replied. I think they're still trying to figure out how we can make things work without their fancy technology. He was right. On the Council command ship, Veltar was having an increasingly frantic conversation with his science staff. How is this possible? He demanded. Chemical rockets cannot achieve interstellar speeds. Sir, Kethra said carefully, they appear to use their chemical rockets only for local movement. For interstellar travel, they seem to use a method of space-time manipulation we don't recognize. What kind of manipulation? It's difficult to explain. They create a field that compresses space in front of their ships and expands it behind them. The ship never actually moves faster than light, but space itself moves around the ship. Veltar's mandibles clicked rapidly. That's actually quite elegant. But how do they generate the power for such manipulation with primitive nuclear reactions? We don't know, sir. Their power systems are incredibly inefficient compared to ours, but they seem to make up for it by simply using much more power than should be possible. More power? Sir, I think they just brute force their way through problems that we solve with elegant technology. Where we would use a precise energy field, they use a massive explosion. Where we would use careful manipulation, they use overwhelming force. Veltar turned back to his communication array. Captain Do-hyun, your methods are crude. They work, came the immediate reply. But they are wasteful, inefficient, inelegant. Admiral, let me ask you something. How long did it take your people to develop gravity manipulation? Several thousand years of careful research and development. And how long did it take us to figure out how to throw rocks really, really fast? Veltar paused. I don't understand the question. Exactly. We've been throwing rocks at things we don't like for about as long as we've existed. We just kept making the rocks bigger and faster. Your gravity manipulation is beautiful and efficient. Our kinetic weapons are simple and brutal. But at the end of the day, your asteroid is still floating around looking pretty, and ours doesn't exist anymore. On the bridge of the Perseverance, the crew was listening to this exchange with growing amusement. Captain, Sujin said quietly, I think they're starting to realize that advanced and effective aren't the same thing. Maybe, Do-hyun replied. But I don't think they understand humans yet. They keep trying to fit us into their categories. Haewon looked up from her station. Sir, I'm monitoring their internal communications. They're calling us impossibly primitive and dangerously unpredictable. Good, Jiwoo said with satisfaction. Unpredictable is better than dead. Veltar's voice came over the communicator again. Captain Do-hyun, your species presents a significant challenge to our understanding of technological development. How so? You should not be able to achieve interstellar travel with your methods. You should not be able to threaten our ships with your weapons. You should not be able to resist our pacification fields. By all logical analysis, you should be cowering in fear. Do-hyun looked around at his crew, all of whom were grinning. Admiral Veltar, let me introduce you to the first thing you need to understand about humans. We specialize in doing things that should be impossible. We've been doing it for thousands of years and we're really good at it. That is not logical. Nope, Do-hyun agreed cheerfully. Logic is overrated. We prefer trial and error, stubbornness, and the occasional brilliant accident. The communication channel went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different, less confident, more worried. What do you think they'll try next? Taeho asked. Probably something involving their superior culture and civilization, Do-hyun replied. They seem like the type who think they're better than everyone else. Are they? Minho asked. Do-hyun looked out at the massive alien fleet with their beautiful ships and their elegant technology, and their 50,000 years of easy victories. We're about to find out. Yeonsu adjusted her diplomatic uniform one more time, before stepping onto the alien transport shuttle. As the Perseverance's chief diplomat, she had been chosen to represent humanity in formal first contact procedures. The alien shuttle was beautiful, with curved walls that seemed to be made of living crystal and no visible controls anywhere. Remember, Do-hyun's voice came through her communicator. You're not just representing our ship. You're representing all of humanity. Try not to start a war. I'll do my best, Captain, she replied. But you know how these things go. The shuttle docked smoothly with the massive Council command ship. As the doors opened, Yeonsu found herself facing 3 aliens who looked nothing like each other. One was tall and thin with 4 arms, another was short and covered in what looked like scales, and the third appeared to be made entirely of some kind of blue energy. Welcome, said the tall one. I am Kethra, chief xenobiologist of the Galactic Council. This is Morden, our cultural analyst, and Nalthi, our diplomatic protocol specialist. Nice to meet you all, Yeonsu said with a bow. I'm Yeonsu, representing the human species. They led her through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. Everything was smooth and flowing with no sharp edges or harsh angles anywhere. It was like walking through a living organism rather than a mechanical ship. Your ship is beautiful, Yeonsu commented. Thank you, Kethra replied. It is grown rather than built. We have moved beyond the crude manipulation of dead materials. They entered a large room filled with floating displays and comfortable-looking seats that seemed to adjust themselves automatically. Morden gestured for Yeonsu to sit while the others took positions around her. Now, Kethra began, we must conduct the standard species classification interview. This will help us determine your proper place within Council space. Sounds reasonable, Yeonsu said, though she was already getting a bad feeling about this. Morden activated one of the floating displays, which showed a complex chart with hundreds of different categories and subcategories. First question, what is your species' primary motivation for territorial expansion? Territorial expansion? Yeonsu thought about it. I guess we expand because there are new places to go, new things to see, new challenges to face. The 3 aliens exchanged glances. Morden made a note on his display. You expand for recreation? Well, not exactly. We expand because we're curious, because we want to learn new things, because staying in one place gets boring. Boredom drives your territorial expansion? Kethra's 4 arms waved in what might have been confusion. Among other things, yes. More note-taking. More glances between the aliens. Next question, Morden continued. What resources does your species fight wars over? Yeonsu paused. This was going to be hard to explain. We fight wars over lots of things. Sometimes resources, but not always. Explain. Well, we've fought wars over ideas. Over beliefs. Over principles. We once fought a war that lasted 4 years, because one group of humans thought they should be allowed to own other humans. The aliens stared at her in silence for several seconds. You fought a war over the right to own members of your own species? Kethra asked. Yes. Well, half of us fought to keep that right and half of us fought to end it. And which side won? The side that wanted to end slavery. But it took 4 years and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Morden's analysis computer made several beeping sounds and displayed what looked like error messages. You fought a war for 4 years over a principle? Nalthi asked. Yes. Not for territory or resources or breeding rights? Nope. Just because we thought it was the right thing to do. More beeping from the computer. More error messages. Next question, Morden said, looking increasingly frustrated. What practical purpose does your species art serve? Art doesn't serve a practical purpose, Yonsu replied. That's kind of the point. Then why do you create it? Because it's beautiful. Because it makes us feel things. Because we like to express ourselves. The computer started making alarming sounds. You expend resources on activities that serve no practical purpose? Kethra asked, all the time. We paint pictures just because we think they look nice. We make music just because we enjoy listening to it. We write stories just because they entertain us. This is highly irregular, Nalthi muttered. Oh, we're just getting started, Yonsu said cheerfully. Morden tried again. What activities does your species engage in for survival training? Survival training? Well, we have schools where we teach young humans how to survive, but we also do dangerous things just for fun. Explain. We jump out of perfectly good aircraft with fabric parachutes just to see what it feels like to fall. We climb mountains just because they're there. We race vehicles at dangerous speeds for entertainment. We have festivals where we throw tomatoes at each other. The computer started smoking. You deliberately seek out dangerous situations for enjoyment? Kethra's voice had risen an octave. Yes, we call it extreme sports. Some humans spend their entire lives finding new ways to almost get killed while having fun. But why? Because it's exciting. Because it makes us feel alive. Because the danger makes the experience more meaningful. The computer shut down completely with a loud pop and a small explosion. Moving on, Morden said quickly, pulling out a backup device. Do you form emotional attachments to members of other species? You mean like pets? Of course, pets. Animals we keep in our homes because we enjoy their company. We feed them and take care of them even though they serve no practical purpose. What kind of animals? All kinds. Dogs, cats, birds, fish, reptiles. Some humans keep animals that could easily kill them. You deliberately cohabit with dangerous predators. Some people keep tigers as pets. Bears sometimes. Venomous snakes are pretty popular. The backup computer also started smoking. This doesn't make sense, Nalthi said. No species forms emotional attachments to other species without some form of practical benefit. Humans do. We even feel bad when our pets die, even though we could just get new ones. Kethra was making rapid notes on a third device. Your species appears to be driven entirely by irrational emotional responses. Pretty much, yes. But how do you make important decisions? How do you govern yourselves? How do you allocate resources? Well, we argue about it a lot. We have different groups with different ideas, and they compete with each other to see whose ideas work best. You have multiple governments, hundreds of them. They don't always get along. How do you prevent constant warfare? We don't always, but we've gotten better at talking instead of fighting. Most of the time. Morden looked up from his frantically beeping instruments. Your species is in a constant state of internal conflict? Not constant. We take breaks sometimes. Usually when there's a bigger threat that requires everyone to work together. What kind of bigger threat? Natural disasters. Alien invasions. Really tough math problems. Math problems? Humans love a good challenge. The harder the problem, the more excited we get about solving it. All three aliens stared at her in complete silence. Finally, Kethra spoke. In 50,000 years of council expansion, we have never encountered a species like yours. We get that a lot, Yonsu said. Your behavior patterns are completely illogical. You waste resources on non-functional activities. You deliberately expose yourselves to danger. You form emotional attachments to creatures that could kill you. You fight wars over abstract concepts. You compete with members of your own species while simultaneously cooperating with them. That sounds about right. How do you survive? Yonsu thought about that question for a moment. It was actually a very good question. How did humans survive being human? I think, she said finally, we survive because we're too stubborn to die. Every time the universe tries to kill us, we take it personally. We've been fighting entropy, gravity, predators, diseases, and each other for thousands of years. We keep winning. That's not possible. And yet here we are, flying between the stars in ships held together with metal and stubbornness, having a conversation with aliens who think we shouldn't exist. Moradin's third computer exploded in a shower of sparks. I think, Kethra said slowly, we need to involve the council leadership. Why? Yansu asked. Because, Nalthi replied, our entire classification system has just declared your species impossible and refused to process any more data. Yansu smiled. Welcome to humanity. We specialize in impossible. Chancellor Zepharos was having the worst day of his very long life. In 3,000 years of leading the Galactic Council, he had never encountered a species that simply refused to fit into their carefully organized system. The humans were like a puzzle piece from a completely different puzzle. He stood in his private chamber, looking out at the human fleet through the crystalline walls of his ship. 12 small vessels against 200 massive council ships, and somehow the humans still didn't look worried. A soft chime announced the arrival of his advisors. Admiral Veltar entered first, followed by the science team that had been trying to classify the humans. Report, Zepharos said without turning around. Chancellor, Kethra began, the humans are unlike any species in our database. Their behavior patterns are completely irrational by our standards. Irrational how? They make decisions based on emotions rather than logic. They waste resources on activities that serve no practical purpose. They deliberately put themselves in danger for entertainment. They form attachments to other species for no reason other than companionship. Zepharos turned to face his advisors. These sound like the traits of a primitive species. Why haven't they destroyed themselves? That's the problem, Chancellor. Despite all these seemingly self-destructive behaviors, they're remarkably successful. They've achieved interstellar travel, developed effective weapons, and created a stable civilization. How is that possible? Mordin stepped forward, carrying a tablet covered in notes and scorch marks. We believe their irrationality is actually a survival strategy. By being unpredictable, they avoid the stagnation that destroys most civilizations. Explain. Most species, once they achieve technological advancement, fall into predictable patterns. They optimize their systems, eliminate inefficiencies, and create stable, logical societies. These societies then stop changing, stop growing, and eventually stop innovating. That's natural progression. Yes, but humans appear to have avoided this trap by remaining deliberately chaotic. They maintain multiple competing governments, encourage individual expression, and constantly create new challenges for themselves. Zepharos considered this. The Council had been dealing with the same basic problems for thousands of years, using the same proven solutions. When was the last time they had encountered something genuinely new? What do you recommend? He asked. Admiral Veltar spoke up. Chancellor, I believe we should offer them placement on a pacification world. They're clearly too dangerous to leave unchecked, but too interesting to simply destroy. A pacification world? Yes, sir. We have several perfect worlds where problematic species can live in complete safety and comfort. No violence, no conflict, no stress. They would be happy there. Zepharos nodded slowly. The pacification worlds were one of the Council's greatest achievements. Beautiful planets where relocated species lived in perfect harmony. All their needs met, all dangers removed. It was the most humane solution for species that couldn't adapt to civilized galactic society. Arrange it, he decided. But first, let them see what we're offering. Show them what a truly advanced civilization can provide. Several hours later, Medical Officer Hyun-woo found himself on a shuttle heading toward one of the Council's pacification worlds. He had been chosen to represent humanity because of his medical background and his reputation for careful observation. The planet was beautiful. Rolling green hills, crystal-clear rivers, perfect weather, and no dangerous animals anywhere. The relocated species lived in comfortable homes, ate delicious food, and spent their days in peaceful activities. His guide was a council scientist named Nalathi, who seemed genuinely proud of what they had accomplished. As you can see, Nalathi said as they walked through a village of relocated beings, every need is met. No one goes hungry. No one suffers from disease. No one faces violence or conflict. Hyunwoo watched the villagers as they passed. They were healthy and well-fed, certainly. They smiled and waved politely, but something seemed wrong. "How long have they been here?" he asked. "This particular group? About 500 years. And what do they do all day?" "They pursue peaceful activities. Art, music, philosophy, recreation. They have no need to work, as all their material needs are provided." Hyunwoo stopped walking and studied the villagers more carefully. They moved slowly, almost aimlessly. Their smiles seemed automatic rather than genuine. Their eyes were empty. He struggled for the right word. "They look dead." "Dead?" "They're perfectly healthy. Our medical facilities ensure they live much longer than they would naturally. I don't mean physically dead. I mean spiritually dead, like the life has been drained out of them." Nalathi looked confused. "They have no stress, no conflict, no danger. They are perfectly content. Content isn't the same as alive." They visited several more villages throughout the day. Each was identical to the first. Clean, safe, peaceful, and utterly lifeless. The relocated species had everything they could possibly need except purpose, challenge, and meaning. During the shuttle ride back to the fleet, Hyunwoo was quiet and thoughtful. Nalathi seemed to interpret this as appreciation for what they had seen. "The Council is prepared to offer your species placement on a similar world," she said. "You would be safe there. Your children would never know war, poverty, or suffering. They would also never know struggle, achievement, or growth," Hyunwoo replied. "Those things are unnecessary sources of stress. No. Those things are what make life worth living." When Hyunwoo returned to the Perseverance, he went straight to Captain Do-hyun's ready room. His report was brief and to the point. "Captain, they want to put us in the galaxy's most comfortable prison. It's a beautiful place where nothing bad ever happens and nothing good ever happens either. The species that live there are technically alive, but they've lost everything that makes life meaningful." Do-hyun listened carefully to the full report. When Hyunwoo finished, the captain sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. "So our choices are surrender and become pets, or fight and probably die. That seems to be the situation, sir. And the Council thinks this is a generous offer?" They seemed genuinely confused about why anyone would refuse perfect safety and comfort. Do-hyun stood up and activated his communicator. "All ship captains, this is Do-hyun. Emergency conference in 10 minutes. The holographic meeting included all 12 human ship captains." Do-hyun quickly summarized what Hyunwoo had discovered, then opened the floor for discussion. "So what's it going to be?" asked Captain Minseo from the horizon. "Do we accept their offer of comfortable extinction?" "Some choice," muttered Captain Byung-ho from the Explorer. "Die fighting or die slowly on a paradise world." "At least if we die fighting, we die as humans," said Captain Yoonji from the Defiance. "My crew didn't volunteer for this mission to end up as zoo animals," added Captain Sang-ho from the Endeavor. The discussion continued for several minutes, but the conclusion was never really in doubt. Every captain said essentially the same thing. They would rather die free than live as prisoners, no matter how comfortable the prison. "All right," Do-hyun said finally. "Let's take a vote. All in favor of telling the Council to shove their generous offer?" 12 hands went up simultaneously. "Unanimous," Do-hyun said with satisfaction. "Now let's figure out how to word this politely." An hour later, Chancellor Zephyros received the human response to their generous offer. He read it 3 times before he was sure he understood it correctly. The message was short and to the point. "Chancellor Zephyros, thank you for showing us your pacification world. It's very beautiful and very peaceful. We're sure the species living there are very comfortable. Our answer is no. We didn't come to the stars to be safe. We came to the stars to be free. We'd rather face whatever dangers the galaxy has to offer than give up our right to make our own choices and our own mistakes. We appreciate the offer, but we'll take our chances in the dangerous universe. It's more interesting out here. Counter offer, go to hell. Respectfully, Captain Do-hyun, representing the human species." Zephyros set down the message and looked at Admiral Veltar. They refused. "Yes, Chancellor. They prefer danger to safety. Apparently, they would rather die than accept our protection. It would seem so." Zephyros walked to his window and looked out at the human fleet again. Still 12 small ships, still not running away. In 50,000 years, he said slowly, no species has ever refused placement on a pacification world. No, Chancellor. Admiral, prepare the fleet for final action. If they won't accept our generosity, then they are too dangerous to leave alive. Yes, Chancellor. What about their message? Zephyros read the human response one more time, focusing on the last line. Their message? Yes, sir. The part where they told us to. What did they say? Go to hell? Zephyros considered this. In 3,000 years of diplomatic correspondence, no one had ever told the Galactic Council to go to hell. I think, he said finally, we're about to find out what hell looks like. The Council fleet moved into attack formation like a well-rehearsed dance. 200 massive ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns around the 12 human vessels. Every weapon system was charged and ready. The plan was simple, a quick, clean extermination that would serve as a warning to any other species that might be foolish enough to refuse Council generosity. Admiral Veltar stood at the center of his command ship, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans had sealed their fate with their stubborn refusal to accept civilization. All ships report ready, Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Excellent. Open a channel to the human fleet. The communication screen activated, showing Captain Do-hyun on the bridge of the Perseverance. The human looked remarkably calm for someone about to be vaporized. Captain Do-hyun, Veltar began, this is your final chance to reconsider. Surrender now, and your people will be relocated to a pacification world. Continue to resist, and you will be destroyed. Do-hyun looked around at his bridge crew, all of whom were working steadily at their stations. No panic, no fear, just humans doing their jobs. Admiral Veltar, Do-hyun replied, thank you for the offer, but we'll stick with our previous answer. You realize you are vastly outnumbered? 200 to 12. Yes, I can do basic math. Your ships are primitive compared to ours. Yep. You have no chance of survival. Probably not. Veltar paused, confused by the humans' casual acceptance of the situation. Then why do you continue to resist? Do-hyun smiled, and for the first time Veltar noticed that it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been pretending to be prey. Admiral, let me tell you a story about humans. We evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the ground we walked on. We were weak, slow, and had no natural weapons. This is irrelevant. No, it's very relevant. See, we survived by being the most stubborn, most persistent, most unreasonably determined species on our planet. When a bigger predator came after us, we didn't run. We picked up rocks and fought back. When the environment tried to kill us, we learned to control it. When other species competed with us for resources, we outlasted them. Do-hyun's smile grew wider. We're the species that looked at fire and decided to carry it with us. We looked at the ocean and decided to sail across it. We looked at the sky and decided we belonged there too. We've been fighting our way up the food chain for millions of years, and we're not about to stop now. Veltar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Something about the human's tone was deeply unsettling. You want to know what makes humans different from every other species you've bullied into submission? We don't just fight when we have a chance of winning. We fight when we don't have a chance of winning. We fight when fighting is stupid. We fight when fighting is hopeless. We fight because that's what we do. On the human ships, communications officers were making final preparations. Hae-won looked up from her station with a grin. Captain, message ready to transmit. Send it. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcasting far beyond the local system. This is the UES Perseverance to Earth Command. We have made contact with a galactic civilization. They seem nice, but they're threatening to put us in a zoo. Please advise. The response came back almost immediately, much to the surprise of the Council forces monitoring human communications. Advisory received. The Terran Defense Fleet is en route. ETA 18 minutes. Try not to start a war before we get there. Veltar stared at his communication displays in shock. That's impossible. How did they receive and respond to a message across interstellar distances in real time? Sir, his science officer reported with panic in his voice, I'm detecting massive space-time distortions throughout the system. Something big is coming. How big? Before the science officer could answer, space around the Council fleet began to tear open. Massive rifts appeared in the fabric of reality itself, and through those rifts came ships. Human ships. Lots of human ships. The first to emerge was a vessel twice the size of the largest council ship. Its hull was scarred and battle-tested, covered in weapons that looked like they had been designed by someone who really enjoyed violence. Behind it came dozens more, each one different from the others. Each one obviously built for war. Within minutes, 500 human warships surrounded the Council fleet. This is Admiral Su Young of the Terran Defense Fleet to all Council vessels. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Veltar couldn't speak. In 50,000 years of Council expansion, they had never encountered anything like this. The human ships were obviously advanced, but they looked wrong somehow. Where Council ships were elegant and beautiful, human ships looked like flying fortresses. Where Council ships demonstrated the harmony of advanced civilization, human ships looked like they had been built by beings who understood that the universe was fundamentally hostile and had planned accordingly. How? Veltar finally managed to ask. Captain Do-hyun's voice came over the communication channel and he was clearly enjoying himself. Admiral, meet humanity. We've been alone in the dark for our entire evolutionary history. We had to learn to fight everything that wanted to kill us, including ourselves. We've been building weapons and defenses for thousands of years, getting better at war with each generation. On the tactical displays, more human ships continued to arrive. Each new arrival was bigger and more heavily armed than the last. The thing about humans, Do-hyun continued, is that we never stopped preparing for the worst-case scenario. Even after we achieved peace on our own world, we kept building defenses. Because we knew that somewhere out in the galaxy, there might be someone bigger and stronger than us. You were preparing for us? Veltar asked weakly. We were preparing for anyone. Pirates, hostile aliens, ancient evils awakening from cosmic slumber, you name it. We've been getting ready for a galactic war since before we met any other intelligent species. Admiral Su Young's voice cut across the communications again. Council fleet, you have 60 seconds to comply with our boarding order. Veltar looked at his tactical displays. The human fleet now outnumbered them more than 2 to 1, and their ships were clearly designed for battle in a way that Council ships were not. Chancellor, he called to Zephyros, what are your orders? There was a long pause before the Chancellor responded. Stand down, Admiral. All ships power down weapons, sir? You heard me. Stand down. As the Council fleet powered down their weapons, Captain Do-hyun opened one final communication channel. Chancellor Zephyros, this is Captain Do-hyun. I believe we need to have a conversation about Galactic Council membership. Membership? Zephyros sounded dazed. Yes, membership. See, we've been listening to your communications. We know about your 50,000 years of peaceful expansion. We know about your classification systems and your pacification worlds and your perfectly organized galactic civilization. And we think it sounds boring. You've created a galaxy where nothing unexpected ever happens, where every species fits into neat categories, where every problem has a standard solution. No wonder you haven't had any new ideas in thousands of years. Do-hyun paused to let that sink in. But here's the thing about humans. We specialize in unexpected solutions to impossible problems. We're the species that innovates under pressure, adapts to changing conditions, and finds new ways to do old things. We're exactly what your stagnant civilization needs. What are you proposing? We're proposing that the Galactic Council gets some new members. Members who don't fit your neat categories. Members who ask awkward questions and come up with disturbing answers. Members who refuse to accept that things have to be done the way they've always been done. The communication channel was silent for a long moment. And if we refuse? Zephyros asked finally. Then you can try to stop us from joining anyway. But I should mention that we're not really asking permission. We're being polite. Admiral Su Young's voice joined the conversation. The Terran Defense Fleet has been authorized to establish humanity as an independent galactic power, with or without Council approval. However, Do-hyun continued, we'd prefer to work with you rather than around you. We think we can help each other. You can give us access to galactic civilization, and we can give you something you've been missing for 50,000 years. What's that? Zephyros asked. Surprised, Do-hyun said with a grin. We can give you the gift of not knowing what's going to happen next. On his command ship, Chancellor Zephyros stood in silence, looking out at the human fleet. 500 ships that shouldn't exist, crewed by beings who didn't fit any known classification, representing a species that had somehow managed to become a galactic power without anyone noticing. For the first time in 3,000 years, Zephyros had no idea what was going to happen next. It was terrifying. It was also the most alive he had felt in centuries. "Very well," he said finally. "Let's discuss terms." The Galactic Council's 50,000-year reign of predictable expansion had just ended. The age of humanity in space was about to begin, and throughout the galaxy, ancient civilizations that had grown comfortable in their stagnation felt a shiver of anticipation. Something new was coming, something unpredictable, something human,